same thing with anything. When you're in the gym, you're pumping weights. How many times you say I got 10 reps to do, but then as you're doing them, you break it down. Okay, 5. Or just two threes. Oh God, 2 and a 1. I can do that. It's easier to your brain if you break it down. You know?
Exactly. People don't understand that. I'm like, I don't get that, and I explain it to clients all the time.
You have to break it down. I mean, my whole company is brick by brick for a reason. My whole thing is you lay one perfect brick every day, and eventually your castle will be built. That's the thing. But you don't sit. That. People know how hard a castle is to build. It takes centuries. It takes thousands of people, billions of dollars. You don't think about that. You think, let me lay one perfect brick today. That's it.
Yeah. One of my talks is build the basement. Build your basement, because you know what? You can spend $100 grand on the roof. If you spend $5,000 on the basement, on the foundation, what good is it?
Mm-hmm. Or even if you build the perfect foundation, but then you don't give the cement time to set. That's also, I mean, it's a metaphor, but you get the idea. It's the same thing, you know?
Now we're going to get philosophical. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to break your brain. So let's talk about something kind of fun. Let's just talk about nutrition you use, because I know you're a huge proponent of nutrition. Obviously, you are what you eat. You guys have heard me talk about nutrition, but what's your take on nutrition in regards to, let's say, physical performance?
Say that again.
Physical performance. I mean, not limited to martial arts.
It's huge in everything, right? And I think it's in daily performance, being able to do your job. So I was fortunate enough in 2010 to meet a guy named Dr. Mark Mincola, who's a naturopath. I got 6 sinus infections in 1 year. He's a naturopath. I got 6 sinus infections in 1 year. No medication helped. And I'm traveling. Do you ever try to fly with a sinus infection?
It sucks.
And then you have to present, hey, it's Coach Kerns. I'm like ready to rip my teeth out with pliers.
Yeah.
Nothing worked. A mentor of mine, Chris Rappold, Master Chris Rappold, owns like 5 martial arts schools. Go see this guy. Go see this guy. I walk in, guy blew my mind. He's like, oh, that's your gallbladder. Your sinuses, we'll clean that up. And I was in shape, but I felt bloated all the time. You know, I have a very fast metabolism, and I just felt bloated. And then it slowed down as I got older, but I just felt bloated. He's like, oh, let's check your other organs. I'm like, okay. He's like, okay. The only organ that he did kinesiology muscle testing to me, some people think it's hogwash. I'm like, whatever. And he finally goes, yeah, the only other organ that's not working effectively is your kidneys. We need warm food. Then he explained to me, because you're eating the same frame of food every day, because it's convenience. Mm-hmm. He goes, it's called a rotating taxonomy diet. I can send you the article on it. I wrote it for Train Hard, Fight Easy years ago, which is now Train. I'm rotating my foods constantly. And then I found out that, and you probably already know this, 60% of men in America have a yeast intolerance. 65% of women have yeast intolerance. What does yeast do in bread? Bloats. I try to tell people, I go, years ago, there was no yeast. Bread was flat. And then somebody figured out, I go, it's all dollars. You put yeast in it, it rises, you feed more people. It's real simple. I said, the problem is, what does yeast do? Bloat. So I went from 180, I was like 182 and a 33. I was as heavy as 193. I had a 32, 33 waist. Within 6 weeks, I went from 182 down to 168. I went down to a 30 waist. Now, people gave me shit, but then when they saw me, they're like, what are you doing? And I've been there ever since. Now I'm 182, but I went on this transdermal gel that has a derivative HGH in it. And I'm like, the shit worked. You know, it helped a lot of my injuries. But anyway, that's another subject. But the rotating taxonomy diet, it works. I mean, I always tell people like, oh, try, intermittent fast. I'm like, look, it doesn't work for me. I tried it. It just doesn't work for me. Try a vegetarian diet. I'm like, it doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. I go, everybody's different. That's why I never discount anything. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. It's like people saying keto is for everybody. No, it's not. It's not for everybody.
I mean, if I may, just real quick, because I mean, I don't know if you speak on this or anything, but there's quite a few things that can be done almost immediately to address any of these things. I mean, one thing I have basically any client of mine who's serious about making progress do is they take a food sensitivity test. And I mean, they're not very expensive, but you get the results of that. You immediately find out what to eat, what not to eat, what you're deficient in, etc. And you can immediately correct your diet. Most people will lose on average about 10 pounds immediately after taking that test. Another thing that's, I don't want to go on length here, but about the gut biome. It's very misunderstood, the actual gut biome. And to keep it real simple, your gut biome can be out of whack in like a single day, if you're taking a medication the doctor prescribes you. It can get destroyed, and it can take months to come back. And having your gut biome destroyed can even lead, by the way, to severe depression and suicide, just by having your gut biome destroyed.
Yep.
If your gut biome is out of whack, you'll hold 10, 15 pounds more weight. I mean, there's some other like kind of quick fire solutions like a colonic, up the hoo-ha.
Yep.
But if you get one of those, I mean, it cleans out your intestines. And generally speaking, after that, if you do a proper protocol to replace the proper gut bacteria in there, I mean, you'll just drop weight and your thyroid and everything else will start working great again.
That's good. Send me that information on the gut bile too.
I'll send you some of my stuff on it. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
But it's just misunderstood stuff that's just really easy to rectify. But if you don't have the knowledge, you just feel screwed and you go from hospital to hospital,
Oh yeah, and the pharmaceutical industry, medication after medication. More medication versus they're finally looking at food. I'm like, you're finally looking at food? Duh. I know we can get into that for.
I'm trying not to get into that, because that's a biggie that bothers me, is just getting people off all the damn medications they're on for no reason whatsoever. I mean, well, actually, that's a good topic. Actually, let's talk about breathing with your fighters, conditioning breathing. Do you ever do things where I don't know particularly your training styles, but with your fighters, have you ever had them do drills where you have like other fighters lay on top of them and forced to breathe through their sides or their back or anything like that?
We played around with that years ago. I do it more now because I was lucky enough about 6-7 years ago to have a gentleman hire me to train, to infuse my stuff into it. So I learned the original Kung Fu, which is not on the books. It's called Jobo.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, Kim Messiah, brought me in. He was one of only 3 teachers from this guy, Alex Anatole. And the first thing we did was Qigong, which is basically Tai Chi breathing, moving and meditation. So it's a 2 and 6 count. Breathe in on 2, breathe out in 6. And then you have all the Wim Hof stuff, and people are finally kind of paying attention to that. So that's a big, that's a big thing that we've always done. And Mark DeLaGrasse is famous for, if somebody's in the corner, it's like breathe deep. And Mark's great because you see some coaches like throw too much shit at guys, right? He'll be like 3 deep breaths right now. Okay, what's going right? What you can do, be doing better. This, and this. That's it. It's like bite size. Give them just the bits and pieces.
Give them little cues to focus on.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, breathing. And people don't understand how important breathing is. I recommend that. I have a whole video on Qigong, and I recommend to the clients, I go, your back's bugging you, breathe. I go, most of us apex breathe. It's what we do. You see the way a baby breathes, full deep breath.
I mean, again, I don't want to talk too much about this, but a big thing is not to be a vertical breather, as you just said, or an apex breather where you breathe with your chest. You want to always be either a hybrid breather where you're doing chest and belly, or strictly a belly breather, which actually best is what we're supposed to do. Strictly is breathe with our belly or dropping the diaphragm down completely. The reason we don't is we imitate superheroes. We don't want to look fat. We wear waist trimmers and tight pants.
And fat if you breathe that way.
I mean, you should be looking fat when you breathe. You should be able to relax your abdominals. If you don't relax your abs, then you're not breathing correctly and you're just vain, honestly, and you're corrupting your health. I mean, it is what it is.
We're gonna go off the rails on this one.
Oh, try not to. Let's bring it back actually. Let's bring it back in, I suppose, a positive way to a weird subject. Let's bring it back to depression. So this is something a lot of people try to tiptoe around or not talk about, but I will personally say I can't tell you the number of times in my life I have been depressed, and I've been extremely depressed. I don't want to get too much into it, but there are many ways to get out of it. Depression is misunderstood. Sometimes there are good reasons to be depressed, and people seem to think that you feeling depressed is a bad thing. Well, sometimes it's correct to feel depressed, and it's natural to feel depressed, and you should just work on getting out of it. So what are some tools that you know of or have used to deal with it?
I appreciate your insight and what you shared earlier. Yeah, I mean, falling out of depression is miserable. And what happens is, just to digress, just to go back a little bit, everybody gets overwhelmed. Everybody. And, we've been taught as men, not to knock women, but we've been taught as men, suck it up. Get over it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. With my father dying, my father died when I was 12. By the time I was 21, I went to a funeral every year thereafter for 10 years.
Heart attacks.
Okay. No, cancer, heart attack. My closest cousin, who was my best friend, took a bullet to the brain 2 hours after Christmas for a bad drug deal when I was 15. So, imagine going, and that's why I'm Catholic, but I'm really not. I'm like, look, when I go, I told my girlfriend, it's in my will. I'm like, put me in a goddamn friggin' boat with my samurai swords, put maple logs, because I like them, and burn them and push me out like Valhalla. That's what I want. I go, fuck this bullshit with the open casket in that boat. It's stupid. I'm like, well, who wants to? And the craziest thing I used to hear is like, oh, like my father, he looks so good. I'm like, how can he look good? He's dead. Huh? I don't get it.
He's he's just a piece of meat at this point. We're celebrating a death. Can't we celebrate his life? You know?
Exactly. So with depression, to come out of it really is, the first thing is find help. You know, find help, whatever it is. Is it a pastor? Is it a psychologist? I mean, right now, I don't know if you know the stats, but 25% of the American population has depression or anxiety. And last year, the stats were for CDC, if they're accurate, the stats were 15 to 44-year-olds. Number one cause of death was overdose. Number two cause of death was suicide. Number six cause of death was basically liver failure. And we kept the liquor stores open because they were necessary. So I get that, but at the same token, why did you close the gyms? So we all know that when it's been told by psychologists and everybody else, one of the best ways to alleviate, one of the pieces to alleviate depression and anxiety, obviously, look at your diet, right? If you're eating shit, you're going to be shit. If you're eating donuts, you're going to feel like crap. And then it progressively worse, because then you look in the mirror and go, I'm fat. Yeah, well, guess what? Second thing is, are you exercising? Whatever it is. Like, I'm sure you've had clients do this, and I've had clients do this. I hate spinning. Then why are you going spinning? Yeah. I hate running. Why are you going running?
Doesn't make sense.
Look, no, I go move and improve. And I go, those endorphins are just as addictive as any drug. They've proven it's just as addictive as sex, for crying out loud. So why not do it?
Well, not only that, but it's real simple, but you don't know how shitty you feel when you're existing on pizza and donuts. And when you actually stop and you switch to something healthy, you don't want to go backwards, because you know what it feels like, and you know what you feel like now, and you want to feel like you feel now.
So that's the first thing is that, right? I push people a lot, obviously, into yoga. You know, I'm like, just try it, because almost anybody can do it at any age. So can't you do weight training or conditioning? You can do it at any age, right? I push people into martial arts. I go try different things. You know, I was a member at Al-Anon for a while, which is the opposite side of alcoholism, right? You know, I was affected by my father drinking, great guy. I was affected by my marriage. My wife became an alcoholic right after my second kid. So I had two kids at home that were 6 months old and 2.5. Miserable. Went on for years, and obviously that's why I got divorced. And you know, that affects you. So in Al-Anon, they say, try different meetings. You know, it's the other side of alcoholism, people that were affected. So I always tell people, try different exercise. Like me, I hate spinning. No bueno. Running, I used to run before, but then, you know, when I got into rebounding work with mini trampolines, the concrete, I'm like, if you're gonna run out in the forest, run out in the sand, run out in ankle deep water. Don't run on pavement. It's man-made. Don't do that shit. So exercise, I think, is one of the best ways. Obviously, you know, people say journaling, but the problem with journaling, when people do journaling, they tend to write, this is a Matthew McConaughey thing, they tend to journal when they're depressed. Well, what about when you're not depressed? You know, what about when you're not? And the other thing I try to do as I came through my depression, you know, because I've got a 4-inch scar on my neck, because I literally try to slit my own throat and then jump off the bridge the next day. And I go, the thing of it is, you got to find what works. Like, I went to ECT therapy, electroconvulsive therapy, because I was in a lockdown ward, 12/23/19. Okay, I woke up Christmas Eve morning. That's where I spent my entire Christmas week, was McLean Hospital. Then I found out about ECT therapy, which basically shocks your brain and basically causes it's the same as a seizure, and changes the and people, like, I had a doctor client said, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And who was a thoracic surgeon? I go, you know what? I go, it worked for me. The normal therapy is 12 sessions, and then they start tapering. I started feeling better after 3. Never heard about it. Didn't even investigate it. I swear my dad talked to me and said, do it, Kevin. Because I tried everything. I tried the drugs. I tried it all. And I'm like, nothing was working. I was in yoga and I hated it. I was working out, hated it, which never happened to me because it was my go-to for years. But I'm like, I got overwhelmed. Went through a messy divorce. You know, the house, my ex used my mental health against me to get my kids to move out that were with me 50%. And I was like, I was crushed. And then business went down. Then how old are you now? 30s?
32.
Okay. Try dating at 50 again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not to mention all the mental abuse from a bad marriage. You know, when you think you don't, and when you think you have nothing as a man, you're emasculated the whole bit. It sucks. It just totally sucks. And then you find these other people, and everybody's, you know, and then think about it. Your marriage failed. Now you're out there. Now you're trying to date again at 40 or 50. You're going, what? I don't know how to do this anymore. Fucking app. What the fuck is this? My girlfriend now, thank God, that girl has been with me for over a year now. And it's like, she couldn't believe when she said to me, I know this kind of digresses a little bit, but she couldn't believe when I told her, she goes, "You've been ghosted?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "You've been catfished." It's all been done to me. She thought it was just a female. Like, it's all been done to me,
Yeah.
all of it, it's all.
Well, the thing is about the depression as well. I mean, I feel I should add this just in case. When you said you should get help, lots of times people don't know what that means. So the thing about depression is it could be a large multitude of things. It could be everything
Absolutely.
from you're not sleeping enough, to you're taking a medication which affects you poorly, to you are deficient in vitamin D3, for God's sake, just that
Absolutely.
alone, to being cut off from contact. When it comes to males, I'm saying males because males are typically a bit more susceptible to this. But with COVID came, the responsibility was taken from a large amount of males that had nothing to do with their fault. They didn't do a bad job, nothing like that. But all of a sudden, their responsibility at work was stolen from them, and they felt aimless and purposeless. And of course, that leads to depression. And as you said, the gyms were closed and everything else. So when you say get help, just be clear, get help from somebody who's able to see a large picture and can point you in the correct direction. But if you can't find somebody like that, anyone will do, but say something. No, nobody knows unless you tell them. No, they're not going to pick it up from your body language. They're too busy with their own lives. No, they're not going to assume or guess or anything else because you're not texting them. You have to say something in order to get help.
Exactly. And I appreciate that. That's true. I appreciate that, Castle, a lot. And I tell people too, like, well, if somebody comes to you, what do? I go, be a pain in the ass. If your friend comes to you and they're like, "I'm depressed, I'm thinking about suicide," you be a fucking pain in the ass. Because here's what I tell people. I said, I'd rather have you mad at me alive than mad at me dead. You know what? You don't want to hang around with me. At least I know at the end of the day, since I came out in 2020, after about a month, after coming out of McLean, I've saved 19 people. Before I even released my book, 19 people. I put up a video about my depression. I didn't even talk about my attempted suicide. We got 2,000 views in one day because I had been off of social media. Now people reach out to me all the time. That was the whole point of this book and going out and doing the lectures and everything else at colleges, wherever. I'm like, I'll talk to anybody about this, anybody about this. And the hard part is actually, being a male with depression. You break your arm, you have a cast. Oh, what happened? You have cancer. People bring food to your house. You say, "I'm suicidal." People are like, whoa.
Stay away from
and
it,
I'm like,
exactly.
and then this is why they call it mental illness. It's the same as anything else. I always look at people and go, if you can call alcoholism or addiction a disease, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as mental illness. It's even worse.
The issue that I find, because again, I don't like to get too much into this, but I will speak on this with clients. And I suppose I should say, I mean, just since you've opened up about it, I haven't opened up like specifically about this before, but I myself have also attempted suicide. And it was due to a large multitude of factors, which I now understand, but at the time I had absolutely no knowledge of. I should also point out the fact that because I didn't have knowledge and because I was in such a dark place, and as you pointed out, I wanted to be a man about it, I never said anything. And this led to a large series of very traumatic events, including me losing my wife, as a matter of fact, at one point. So this is something which is misunderstood. It's something which needs to be talked about. And as you guys know, I talk about these difficult topics as well. And I appreciate you opening up about it. And I really appreciate everything you do in regards to it. You're very amazing. From what I've seen anyways in your videos over the past couple of weeks, are pretty amazing work you do about it. So I appreciate all that you do. But anyways, just to get back to it, what specifically, other than asking for help, I would say, would you recommend can be done, say in terms of dietary, supplementation, perhaps walking, going in the sun, taking responsibility of some form, anything like that, would you recommend?
Yeah, first off, I appreciate your accolades. Look, I'm just a good guy, good man trying to do the right thing. In the Jewish religion, they call it a mensch, a good guy. I'm trying to leave a legacy. I'm trying to help people since day one. I wrote the books to help people. If it makes money, great. But if I save one person's life with either book, one kid that doesn't think they're useless, I've won, totally won. And the funny thing is, you and I, if money wasn't an object, I'd still do the same thing. I don't care. Or if I didn't need it, I'd still do it. As far as what to look for or ways out of the depression, all of it, you have to experiment with yourself. You have to find out what works for you. I know one thing, like my good friend Tim Goodwin said with COVID, he's like, "Oh, I've spent a lot more time out in nature." He looked at the reverse of it. My book mentor, Ken Baum, who wrote Mind Over Business and Mental Edge Training, what he did, I don't know if he did it before or not. He lost like 80% of his business like me overnight. He started woodworking. He put up videos on woodworking.
Oh,
It's like, I'm just going to do something different. Yeah, it was great. I'm like, Ken, I looked at him, I go, that's ingenious. He goes, yeah, I figured I have this time. So, and you know, and other people, like there was another thing, I forget what's it called. Another client told me he had his kids doing it. You could take like courses online, like college level courses. So he had his like teenage boys doing it, and that supplemented some. So I think, you know, you got to find what works. Well, maybe go on the beach, like me and my girlfriend, beach. Like she's like, beach or mountains? Beach. I said, I love the mountains, but I want to go to the beach. You know, I want to go to the beach. So I tell people, go find that. Like I live in Rhode Island, so beaches are everywhere, and I grew up near the water. So I'm like, you know, I live on you know, right on the Blackstone River. So I've got water all the time out my window, and there's something soothing about it. So, you know, find what works. The carnivore diet. I know people did a lot of studies on the carnivore diet, and that has worked for people with that. And then, you know, take bits and pieces. Don't always listen to the goddamn lab coats. They may be wrong. I mean, I tried all the different drugs. I tried everything. And it's funny, once I went through the whole thing and I went through my ECT and everything else and got better the whole bit, and I was taking a small dose of antidepressant. Now, my therapist, great guy, I told him, I said, I'm done with this. He's like, well, and you know, they have to say, well, to cover their ass, which I get. Well, you're in remission. I said, no, I'm fucking cured. I'm done with it. I know why I got there. I know what it feels like. I know what all this feels like, and I'm not going back. I've made up my mind. I am not going back. Like Les Brown would say, a made up mind is unstoppable. I'm not going back. I know what happened to me. I know how it happened. I've reflected. My kids haven't been with me for 18 months. I get it. I've had time on my own to go, okay, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Not even why. Why is not as important as the how. This is how it happened. You know, this is how it happened. The how will get handled. You know, the why, I'm like, okay, this, and this. So a friend of mine from Ireland, Keith Foster, said to me, he goes, I never thought of this. You got overwhelmed. And then as a coach, you know, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to be transparent. There's a stigma out there, right? There's a huge stigma on mental illness. I had it too. I didn't realize this until I was talking to one of the people at McLean Hospital, because they have to fight the stigma every day. I had it. I was guilty of it. Because in my head, my ego took over. I'm Coach Kerns. I can handle this. It's all in my head. Blah, blah, blah. I'm a man. Suck it up. Be a man. What the fuck? All of that. It just kept playing. Till eventually I said, you know what? A friend of mine said to me, he goes, if you have a kidney problem, you go to a kidney doctor. If you have a heart problem, you go to a heart doctor. How do you think you're going to fix the most complicated organ in your body? And I apologize, I've got to wrap up in a minute or two.
No, I know, but no, you're absolutely right about that. And I would say, you, I'm sure have been through this many times yourself, but you'll be doing something and you realize, you know, if I was coaching one of my clients, I wouldn't have them doing this. Why am I doing it? And you remind yourself, as you almost self-coach, I guess. You say, hey, this isn't okay, and I wouldn't allow it in one of my clients or somebody I love. Why the hell am I doing it? Doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
That was being mindful.
I think that be mindful. And then the big thing at the end of the day is, you know, whatever it is, find that. I always tell people, what's your what? Why do you do it? What's your what? Forget the fuck, like Wayne Dyer would say, forget the how. Like this is, every tattoo means something. So this is what I say all the time. Hold your vision, keep your passion, maintain and invest in your perseverance.
Absolutely.
You know, and that was Wayne Dyer said, hold your vision, keep your passion. Then I put this on, I said, there's a missing word. I go, because when you listen to Goggins, right? People are going to be naysayers. Oh, it's stupid. Don't do that. Blah, blah, blah. Look at Arnold said it this morning. I was listening to Les Brown. When Kennedy took office, we're going to go to the moon in 10 years. He set the precedent, and we did it. And if you thought about in the 50s, can you imagine being a kid in the 50s or 60s going, the moon, what are you, stupid? Ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. Or it's like, you know, that which the law of, say, let's say the law of flotation. The law of flotation was throw shit in water, it floats. Can you tell me, honestly, you could probably, I can't. You tell me how a fucking aircraft carrier floats.
Yeah, I can't. We're not going to get into it. Yeah.
But I'm like, I look at that. I go, this doesn't make sense. It's steel. The keel is cement, and there's like 5,000 men. And I don't get it. Can you imagine being a Viking going, "That's in the float. What's in the float?"
Sorry, I'm just laughing a little bit. But no, you're making a very excellent point.
It's funny.
And I mean, people will call something like that like manifesting as well, but I would make it even simpler. It's very simple. You're not going to get a single thing in life unless you aim at it. And guess what? Yeah. As humans, we're aiming creatures. That's why our eye is made this way. That's why we have a pupil, so we can see what everybody else is aiming at. And with
Third
our
eye.
vision, we can only focus on so much information, which is why we've, these tiny little things. So if you start speaking and you start writing, and even if you start being a hypocrite and saying you're something that you're not, eventually you're going to start acting that way. You're going to start behaving that way. You're going to start literally, I don't want to say the word manifesting it, but because you're aiming at it, you're going to start collecting all those things around you and doing more of those things that you're trying to become. Even if it's imitation, you're going to start doing better about it.
Absolutely. And it's like anything, right? Zig Ziglar would say, negative thinking never helped anything, but it's better than, positive thinking never helped anything, but it's better than negative thinking.
It's true. Now, I know you got to get off, so why don't you, if you could do me a favor, could you please just go ahead? I want you to shamelessly self-promote yourself. Tell me where everybody can find everything. Do your thing.
Shamelessly, burnwithkerns.com. Okay. The books, Always Pick Last, are on Audible and on Amazon. Okay. There's Light in the Tunnel, How to Survive and Thrive with Depression, on Amazon and Audible. Yes, what's this?
I'm pointing at the books you're holding for you.
Oh, okay.
I'm assisting. I'm like a sales girl, but I'm not as pretty.
It's okay. So burnwithkerns.com, we have a range of programs between online, group, corporate, you name it. Obviously, motivational speaking, I go out and do that too in the certification program. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate you guys. And who's the admin on the website, or who started the Facebook page? Was it Alex?
Alex, I believe. Alex Hallis. Yeah, we're going to thank him.
Yeah,
I'll reach out.
Yeah, thank him, and then thank you for reaching out to me, Castle. We'll keep this friendship going, because I always like to talk to people that are, because you know how this business is sometimes, protect the rice bowl. I'm like, guys, why can't we just share information?
Exactly.
It's almost like what happened with COVID. Right? Nobody wanted to share anything.
I tell you, I was a chef for 16 years, and for 16 years, every single show, that's my recipe. It's my recipe. I'm like, you idiot. It's on Google and I can taste it. You moron. Number one. Number two, I mean, every single thing that I teach any client, anything I've ever written in any of my books or my articles, anything that I sell on my website, it's all for free on my YouTube channel. Every single bit of information. So you guys can have it too, because I don't do that sharing thing. Here's what I do. When I get more money, more information or something, I don't build bigger fences. I build a longer table. That's how it works, guys.
A longer table. I like that.
That's how it works, though. That's how it should work, anyways.
Well, we'll close with this then. Hold your vision, keep your passion, maintain and invest in perseverance, and above all, as the tattoo says, sumbak sumbam, be relentless.
Get some, guys. And remember, just don't stop. Do not stop for anything or anyone. If you want something, you must pursue it, because nobody's going to hand you shit. That's how the world works.
Take the rearview mirror in your car, throw it out, because that's what's behind you.
Yeah, who the hell
behind
goes that
you.
way? Yeah,
Move
can't
forward.
go backwards. Can't go backwards.
I
Another law of physics.
drive pretty good backwards. I do. I drive pretty good backwards. All right, Castle. So what do you cup? Cup. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.